Before I introduce Stu Wightman to speak to the memorial chair for Jim Carnegie, I just wanted to say that this was Jim Carnegie was a longtime member of Carleton, uh, beloved by his friends, really. He died at a young age from an illness he could not conquer. And Stu was one of his closest friends. In fact, Jim used to call him his big brother. This was a difficult interview for Stu, but he got through it. And just wanted you to know that Jim's was a very special man, and that chair is a very special chair. There was over 300 people at the dedication for that chair, just to show you how many people appreciated him. So, without further ado, here's Stu. Okay, I'm here with Stu Wightman on the 14th tee, and we're here at the Jim Carnegie chair. And Jim was a special guy, but first I want to ask, Stu, why is it on the 14th tee?
Well, it's on the 14th tee because Jimmy lived right behind us for just adjacent to the 13th green for his entirety of his time here at Carleton, many decades. And he lived there with his wife and children, and ultimately just his wife and 4 or 5 dogs. His wife was is a medical lecturer at the medical school at the University of Ottawa. Okay. She still lives there.
Yeah.
And
so we're at just behind us here.
Yeah.
That's Jimmy's house, and it's an interesting story about Jimmy's house. His house keeps coming up, as you'll see threads right here. You were in the club championship one year, and you were doing pretty good that year.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you went to the final. You were in the playoff that year. It was about, I don't know how many years was that, 10 years ago?
It would have been, I was 72 at the time, so it would have been 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Tell us about that story.
Well, it was the last round, and we were in the last, I was in the last group. For some reason, the organizers that year decided that they would take the big water casks off the course and put bottled water on. And the organizers lost sight of the fact that often on the last round of the club championship, a lot of members have caddies. And so by the time our last group got to the 13th hole, there was no water left. So coming up the 13th hole, and I wonder if I could just digress for a minute and explain why I did or asked my caddy to do what he did. Jimmy Carnegie was the kind of a guy that he and this one conversation captures his heart and soul and contribution to Carleton. He said to me, if you're ever coming up the 13th hole and you feel like your game has abandoned you and your friends have abandoned you and you're all by yourself struggling with your game and you feel like you want a beer, come into my garage, go into the fridge, help yourself.
Okay, so there you go.
So that was the sponsorship for the exchange, because that's exactly what happened. It was as you said, it was in the last round of the club championship. I, at the time, was tied for the lead, and I was thirsty. There was no water, so I said to my caddy, "Would you mind, Roger Johnson? Would you mind going into Jimmy's garage and getting a beer?" So, I said, "I'll meet you on the 14th tee." So he did, and I was on the 14th tee, and he came back, and it was foul, filth, foul. I mean, the air was blue with his cursing, and I said, "What the hell's your problem?" And he turned around and showed me the back of his leg, and he was wearing shorts, and there was a great gaping hole in it, and the blood was running down the back. It was like one of Jimmy's dogs had bit him. So he was in no frame of mine to be a positive force for the rest of the round. And in fact, I eagled the hole and went ahead in the tournament. And when I turned to him and said, "Are you happy now?" He said, he said the same thing he said on the tee. He was in a bad frame of mind for the rest of the round. But but that was Jimmy's spirit.
Yeah.
You know, he was a throwback. As I said, he believed that if you were a member of this club, you were an owner. And while it wasn't explicit, it was certainly implicit that as an owner, you had a responsibility to step up and help out. And believe me, if there was any kind of a task or any kind of a challenge for the club, he was the first guy to put up his hand and volunteer.
He was such a friendly guy. I mean, like, he just opened with everybody, and I remember I've had many talks with him, and he was just very open, friendly, and you're right. He would invite you in, and that place was for all the members that knew him. That place was always open if they wanted to. Unfortunately, he died young.
He did.
He had an illness, and not going to go into the details of it, but he tell us about the end there. It was close.
Well, it was painful. He endured this illness for quite some time. His friends rallied around and tried to help, but it was just a challenge that physiologically he couldn't overcome.
Right.
And when he died, we all felt a deep sense of loss. We were somewhat mollified when we managed to convince the club that we should have this bench and that it should be here. And there was a wonderful ceremony with a gathering of all his friends right here on the 13th, adjacent to the 13th fairway. It just happens that his brother and sister-in-law live right next to him, and they were the sponsors for this day. And I would say there was probably about 300 people out there.
Yeah.
All of them having had some experience.
Just shows you how much people thought of Jim.
Yeah, he was never president. He was never the captain. He was never sort of singularly in the limelight, but he was always there.
Yeah.
And
So what's on the bench here? It says, Jimmy Carnegie, life is short, my friends, swing hard. Probably couldn't get anything any better sentiment.
No, exactly. That typified his style of play too.
Yeah.
He went for the fences, that's for sure. And we travel a lot together. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we were in Ireland 4 or 5 times together playing golf, and he certainly came down on a number of occasions to play golf with Daphne and I in Florida. So, I mean, he was just the most convivial person to play golf with that I knew, and most people believe that. And it's one of the reasons why this bench is here, because when he left us, as you say, prematurely, we felt a great loss.
Right. So, next time you're on this tee, you'll know the story of Jimmy Carnegie, and those who remember him fondly, and those who didn't know Jim, now you know a little bit more. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you very much, Stu.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Swing hard, people. Jimmy would.
Yeah.